us in this webinar and the launch of the campaign No Tech for Apartheid and Genocide in Cluj-Napoca. I'm Raluca Dan, member of the Palestine Solidarity Cluj-Napoca, and I'm going to host the event today. But before jumping into it, I have some practical aspects to Romanian listeners. Aveți jos, în partea de jos, butonul de interpretare, pentru că toată discuția va avea loc în limba engleză, însă vom asigura interpretare simultană în limba română. So, puteți apăsa pe butonul de interpretare și să alegeți canalul de limba română. And now, back to English. Our event is not only here on Zoom, but also streamed live on YouTube and also on our Facebook channel and Solidaritate România Palestina Facebook channel. So you can also follow us there. We are going to have at the end of all the discussions a Q&A session where you can have the floor and address a question either in English or Romanian. But in the meantime, you have questions for our speakers. You can also address them in the chat here in the Zoom. So let's jump to it and welcome our guests today, with whom we are going to discuss about the links between the companies in the tech sector and the military-industrial complex and Israeli government in advancing the apartheid regime in West Bank and the ongoing genocide in Gaza. And hopefully we will also tackle what can us as citizens, as tech workers, and generally citizens concerned about the situation in Palestine can do to hold accountable these companies and make them divest from genocide and apartheid. So thank you again to the guests for joining us today. We have Bella Jacobs. She's the coordinator for Tech Campaign at Boycott, Divest and Sanction National Committee. Then Joanne Carney, member of the No Tech for Apartheid Ireland, and Vlad Mureșan, member of the Palestine Solidarity Cluj-Napoca. Thank you all. So I will give the floor to the first speaker. So Bella, you can join us.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me. So sorry. Can I share my screen, please? Can I have permission so that I can show the PowerPoint? Sorry, 1 second here, everyone. Okay. All right. So I am Bella with the BDS National Committee, and I'm here to talk today about big tech's complicity in apartheid and genocide. So first off, just a little background information. What is the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions Movement, which we shorten as the BDS movement? So the Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions Movement is a Palestinian-led movement for freedom, justice, and equality. And the movement coming from Palestinians and Palestinian civil society, they're asking for three main things. Firstly, they're asking for an end to the military occupation of Palestine, and dismantling the apartheid wall is a part of that, the wall that runs between the West Bank and what is considered 1948 Israel. Secondly, Palestinians are asking for equal human rights, the same rights that Israelis have. And three, they're asking for the right of return for all Palestinians. So, as many of you likely know, in 1948, when Israel became a country, many Palestinians were expelled during the Nakba, a time of forced removal and ethnic cleansing. And so this third right of return is asking for Palestinians who possibly at this point live in Lebanon or the United States or Ireland or in Romania have the ability to return back if they would like to. And another important thing about the BDS movement is that it is a call from Palestinian civil society. And so I am here representing the BDS National Committee. And the BDS National Committee is the leading organization of the BDS movement for Palestinian freedom. It is a nonviolent, anti-racist, inclusive movement that is representing over 200 civil society organizations in Palestine. And that includes trade unions, that includes women's rights groups, that includes different minority groups. There's many groups that make up the BDS movement, and the BDS National Committee is representing them. And so the BDS National Committee's role is to strengthen and spread the culture of boycott as a central form of civil resistance to Israeli occupation, colonialism, and apartheid. And so a key part of the BDS movement is that it is a nonviolent way for people to support Palestinian freedom. And part of what we do at the BDS National Committee is we formulate strategies and coordinate plans of action internationally. So I'm based in the US. Many parts of the BDS National Committee team are based, all over the world. And so we're working with local groups, including this one right here today, to work on campaigns for strategic boycott, divestment, and sanctions. And as we're doing this, we also want to bring out anti-normalization campaigns. So what that means is that we reject in fighting for Palestinian freedom, we reject colonialism and apartheid. And in doing that, we're saying that you can't partner with, for example, an Israeli university and a Palestinian university and think that's Palestinian freedom. In fact, we can't do that. Similar to if you think of apartheid South Africa, it would not make sense to say that you are supporting Black rights while you're supporting a university, for example, that only allows white students in, and then also partnering with a university that allows Black students. So part of what we're doing is also trying to show that we can't normalize the state of Israel. We can't normalize apartheid, normalize genocide, and that we have to continue calling it out for what it is. So the high-tech sector is essential for Israel's economy. And so this is so important that 20% of Israel's GDP in 2023 was made up of the high-tech sector. And so my role specifically is looking at how we can target Israel's high-tech sector and the technology companies that are doing two things. They are investing in the Israeli economy and propping up the Israeli economy, which makes Israel a more powerful political actor. And secondly, these companies are producing the infrastructure for AI weaponry, and they are also oftentimes creating the weapons themselves. So in the 21st century, warfare has changed dramatically, and colonialism has changed dramatically, so that with the emergence of new technologies, and so with these new technologies, we see that technology companies are often just as complicit as weapons manufacturers. Because while technology are tools that we use in our everyday lives, they're also weapons of war. And so at the BDS National Committee, we have, as you can see, this graphic on the left, an idea of how the best ways to boycott. And so Palestinians have been advocating for what we call targeted boycotts, where if we all are these little arrows and we're all targeting very specific, highly complicit companies and corporations, then we can make a much bigger impact than if some of us are boycotting one company, boycotting another company. That won't put the pressure on the companies. And so that's exactly where we need this organization to really come into play. And so we need local organizing around very strategic campaigns. So as I was saying, technology is the foundation of Israel's economy. So tech is Israel's war chest. And tech also offers Israel the tools to automate genocide and apartheid. And so these are now weapons of war and the fundamental tools of Israel's war chest. So what does it mean? We'll get to what it means to automate apartheid and genocide in a second here. But I want to go over a couple complicit tech companies that are current BDS targets. My role is new, and so with my role, what we're doing is we want to put even more pressure on the Israeli tech sector and on companies that are choosing to support Israel's war crimes and crimes against humanity through the use of their technology. And so as of right now, the BDS National Committee has ongoing campaigns pressuring Amazon and Google, HP, and Intel. Amazon and Google are complicit in Israel's genocide on Gaza and apartheid in the West Bank through Project Nimbus, which powers the Israeli military's genocide by offering cloud infrastructure. So it's important with tech, it's sometimes hard because technology is so integrated into our everyday lives that we almost forget it's there. Or it's something that we can't see that's a little bit more abstract, like cloud infrastructure. But that does not mean that this can be something that we continue to allow to go unchecked. So Amazon and Google are deeply complicit through Project Nimbus, and that's something that No Tech for Apartheid groups across the world, particularly here in the US and I think as well in Ireland, have been pressuring Amazon and Google. And Amazon and Google have both fired employees, but tech workers are organizing in a really exciting way. And then we have HP, which has long been a BDS target because HP provides computer hardware to the Israeli army and maintains data centers through their servers for the Israeli police. And when we talk about how genocide and apartheid can be automated through technology, this is a real example of that, where HP is maintaining data centers and servers for the Israeli police, and that's able to speed up the way that they are able to do facial recognition at military checkpoints. It makes it easier and quicker for the Israeli military to justify targeting certain people based on facial recognition or other database information. And it's also storing this mass list of people who are all potential targets, civilian targets, for the Israeli military in their campaigns of apartheid and genocide. Intel is another BDS target because we talked earlier about how the tech sector makes up 20% of Israel's GDP, which is very significant. And Intel is a single company, a single US-based company that provides 1.75% of Israel's entire GDP. And Intel has invested more than $50 billion US dollars in the country over the last 50 years. They're deeply complicit in other crimes against humanity, building factories on Palestinian villages, etc. But here with Intel, there was a huge BDS win where Intel was supposed to be building a $25 billion factory in Israel, in addition to the factories it already has. But through a BDS pressure campaign, and shareholder strategy, trying to pressure shareholders. Just the threat of a BDS campaign caused Intel to cancel that $25 billion factory. And so that's important in two ways. First off, that was the biggest BDS victory ever, which was so exciting. And so now we don't have that factory being built on the ruins of Palestinian villages, which is so important. And also that 1.75% of Israel's GDP is now at risk, just like the rest of the high-tech sector is at great risk right now. Part of what the BNC has done recently is published a report called Shut Down Nation, where and you can find that on the BDS website, Shut Down Nation, where we talk about how for companies that are investing in Israel, it's actually not a very smart investment because you're investing in a war zone. You're investing in an economy that is sinking, especially with the tech sector. We see every month there are reports of tech sector workers leaving Israel. We see companies, including Intel, pulling out of huge investments because not only is Israel an immoral investment, it's also not a very smart monetary investment for many businesses. And so that's something that we need to play both sides of. Both show that Israel is an amoral investment, that we don't want to support apartheid and genocide. And secondly, it's not a very smart business investment. Also, there are many BDS targets that aren't on this list who are also deeply complicit, including Cisco, Microsoft, Meta, IBM, etc. And then I know I'm running out of time, but I'd also like to talk with you about what it means to automate apartheid. So if you are to, I had the opportunity to visit the West Bank and Jerusalem in the Old City, and I knew that there was incredible surveillance, but I think being somebody who had not lived there, being somebody who had not seen that before, going there and seeing cameras like in this photograph on every single building, every street corner, there was no place that was not being surveilled. And that level of surveillance for Palestinians puts them at incredible risk and is also defies the international right to privacy. And so this is a quote from a resident in the West Bank. Israeli soldiers can tell you that your name is not in the database. It's as simple as that. And then you're not allowed to pass through to your house. And what Iyad is saying right here is that throughout Israel and the West Bank and the occupied territories, people have to pass through checkpoints as a part of the apartheid system. And so this apartheid system has now been equipped with extraordinary technology to make it even harder for Palestinians to legally and pass through, which is their right as a human being. And so this is prevalent in military checkpoints. These military checkpoints are now outfitted with technology from many of the companies we were discussing on the previous slide. And these companies are also helping with constant surveillance technologies, which assist in committing war crimes, the crime of apartheid, and making life very unbearable and unsafe for Palestinians. And so what does it also mean to automate genocide? So in Palestine and Israel, apartheid has been automated for a long time, but now, especially in the last year, we've seen how because the Israeli military has contracts with many of these huge tech giants, we see how genocide can also be automated by having the connections between the Israeli military being backed up and equipped by these technologies. And so this is from an Amnesty International report about automating genocide. I'll read this quote. And this is from an Israeli military commander. We were not interested in killing Hamas operatives only when they were in a military building or engaged in military activity, an intelligence officer told 912 magazine and Local Call. On the contrary, the IDF bombed civilians in homes without hesitation as a first option. It's much easier to bomb a family's house. These technology systems, are built to look for them in these situations. And so with automating genocide, it's important to look to specific AI programs, including Meta. Meta offers us Facebook, and it also created Lavender, which is an AI technology used to find targets, and especially in Gaza right now. And it's basically AI is deciding who to kill. And these decisions to bomb people and buildings are not made by people, they're made by computers. But it's important here not to take the blame away from the Israeli military and just say, it's a problem with the technology. We need to improve the technology. Because this technology was bought or sometimes offered freely by tech corporations, and the Israeli military knows that this technology is killing civilians. And so there's mass civilian casualties are normalized and justified because of the use of AI. And so the genocide taking place in Gaza, we've seen how quickly it was able to unfold, and we've been able to see the mass destruction it caused in such a short period of time. And that really is because of the technology that has been able to automate genocide. And so I was speaking about Lavender AI. Lavender's influence on the military's operations was such that they essentially treated the outputs of the AI machine as if it were a human decision. So with all of this in mind, that's a bit of an overview about tech companies' complicity in Israeli apartheid and genocide. And so let's talk about how we can hold big tech accountable. So first off, we can pressure our workplaces and schools to drop contracts with complicit tech companies. So that includes, if you're a university student, dropping contracts with tech corporations that are complicit in crimes against humanity and human rights violations. That also includes boycotting BDS targets. So unlike other consumer products like boycotting Puma shoes or boycotting Carrefour grocery stores, tech is harder to boycott, and we recognize this because the few tech giant companies, they have a monopoly over our lives pretty much. But there are other ways that we could still boycott BDS targets and put pressure on these companies, including organizing divestment campaigns at your schools, through your local governance, and through your companies. And if you work in tech, you can organize with your fellow workers to oppose genocide. And I know that that may seem very hard, especially if you're, at risk of losing your job, you need income. I totally understand. And this is something that I've been working a lot with in the US with tech workers. But there are ways to organize and build power. And I think that later in the talks today, you'll get to hear from local partners about how you can partner, build power, and organize. And if you're a tech worker, we need you in this fight. And for anybody else, if you're thinking, oh, well, I'm not in a school, I don't think this would work in my company, I'm not sure how to go about this work with my local government, you have to get involved with grassroots organizing locally. You see on this call, there are already people who are like-minded with you, who want to learn with you, who want to do this work with you. And I am so excited to see the work that you all are doing here in Romania. And please reach out to the BDS National Committee and to your local groups. And I'm excited to see how everyone can organize to hold big tech accountable. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Bella. I guess we will come back to your presentation after the two other speakers. For all those of you who entered in the meantime, we had our first presentation made by Bella Jacobs, the coordinator of tech campaigns within the BDS movement. Dacă sunteți vorbitor doar de limba română, Există un buton în bara de jos a ferestrei de interpretare și puteți să alegeți canalul de limba română, întrucât întreaga discuție se va purta în engleză. Puteți să adresați întrebări la finalul discuției sau pe chat. Now back again to English. Thanks again. And then let's move on to Joanne Carney from No Tech for Apartheid, Ireland.
Thanks.
Welcome, Joan.
So, hi everyone, I'm Joanne. I represent No Tech for Apartheid in Ireland, as Raluca said. I'm an employee of Oracle and I recognise my complicity in genocide. So today we're talking about one of the major reasons that Israel is able to use and maintain its sophisticated weaponry on Palestinians, and that is technology, artificial intelligence, big tech companies. So technology has always been at the forefront of wars. IBM performed the census to allow both Nazis and South Africa's apartheid regime to catalogue and assassinate their victims. These days, as Bella discussed, we have Project Nimbus, the $1.2 billion contract awarded to Google and Amazon to provide cloud services to the Israeli government and military. Since it was signed in 2021, many Google employees have been fired for standing up against this contract, including the chief of corporate diversity. And these individuals have put their souls ahead of their careers. We know not everybody can do that, so big well done to those individuals. As Bella already talked about, AI Lavender, but it's worth repeating what this really means. AI Lavender is used in drones, which analyzes the faces of Palestinians and tracks and kills individuals that it determines might be a threat. So an algorithm is determining who lives and who dies. And this might sound like an intro to the Terminator movie, but this is the world that we've created in modern day technology. The other piece of software, horrifically named Where is Daddy, is used to determine when a potential terrorist is at home and asleep, and then bombs him and his entire family. As the IDF person was quoted as saying, it's much easier to bomb them when they're asleep. Of course, to the IOF and Zionists, every Palestinian and now Lebanese is a potential terrorist. So they're just using this software on everybody. Israel then also goes on and sells these weapons to other countries, citing them as battle-tested against Palestinians. They weaponize communications blackouts, creating a lack of access to families to contact each other and to call emergency services, to provide journalism and stop the coordination of aid. Most big tech companies use a number of methods to silence the hundreds of thousands of employees worldwide, ensuring that we keep on churning out that genocide enabling software and just keep our mouths shut. They offer us decent wages, benefits, talk about how inclusive they are, pretend to care about our well-being, and all groups of people except Palestinians, of course. You see, big tech is massively infiltrated with Zionists. Google and Amazon happily signed Project Nimbus, knowing that there was clauses that state they cannot drop the contract, essentially tying them into apartheid and genocide for years to come. Siemens is the main contractor for the underground cable connecting Israel with Europe. This is clearly a big part of why Israel wants to exterminate Palestinians and just clear the area. NTT Data are investing heavily in Israel research centres, which are often known to work directly with the IOF. Alstom clears Palestinian homes and families from its path to make way for tram lines on stolen land. Meta censors pro-Palestine accounts on Facebook and Instagram by shadow banning, accusing them of spreading false information, while at the same time promoting Zionist accounts. Microsoft's Azure powers Elbit, which is the Israeli weaponry system, and it also powers the Israeli prison services. Cisco provides equipment to allow Israel to surveil occupied Palestine. The BDS committee shows specific targets to boycott, but we should all be aware of just how complicit most tech companies are, whether indirectly or directly, in the genocide of Palestinians. You can see the depth that this goes is just phenomenal. Israel also illegally controls all of the communications in Gaza using equipment and software from these and other tech companies. All of these companies have expressed deep sympathy with Israel, but not mentioned Palestine in the 12 long months of terror. They've clubbed together and created environments where it's somehow considered unprofessional to speak out against murder. Well, I firmly reject that rhetoric, and I'm also speaking out against my own employer, Oracle, and I can safely say that my views are my own and definitely not that of my employers. So Oracle also bid for Project Nimbus, and when they lost, they appealed it to the Supreme Court, saying that they understood Israel's needs better than anybody. Even after losing the bid for Project Nimbus, Oracle still built the underground data center in Israel and continued to provide a variety of other services to the Israeli military. Oracle have made public statements about its commitment to Israel, and in January just this year, the CEO of Oracle stated to employees and customers, if you don't stand with Israel, maybe you're not the right fit for us. Oracle have provided goodie bags of medical supplies to the IOF while there's children over the wall who cannot get anaesthesia for a severed limb. They provided hot meals to IOF soldiers while Palestinian families are starving to death a few miles away. So why are they all doing this? Why are big tech companies so committed to Israel? Well, basically because Israel became known as the Silicon Valley of the Middle East, and war means big money for them. A lot of their board members are also shareholders in weapons companies. Just take a look at this slide showing the board member connections. They are all war profiteers, and they clearly don't care if the military is committing war crimes and mass slaughtering people once they're getting their paycheck. Technology is the epitome of genocide, and without it, they will be far less successful. Can you imagine if the British who colonised Ireland had access to the technology that Israel and the US now have? Our resistance groups wouldn't have been able to survive and save our land, our culture, or our families. So what can we do? In Cork, the City Council, Cork in Ireland, where I'm from, the City Council was pressured through the BDS committee to stop purchasing HP products, for example, and they have committed to making Cork an apartheid-free zone. So you can pressure your own local city to do this and to boycott the other products on the list. Many students around the world are making commitments to not work for companies associated with genocide. So please, if you're a student starting out, as well as what Bella said, and pressuring the BDS movement, you can also join the movement and find a career path that does not commit terror crimes. So research your employer well before joining, and I really wish I had done that. If you are part of a big tech company like me and many others, please make noise in your workplace. Contact your HR and diversity departments over and over again. Let them know that it's not okay to be complicit with this. Speak up for Palestine unashamedly on LinkedIn. And do not sell your soul to technology. Do not allow anyone to tell you that it's controversial or unprofessional to say, do not murder children. Big tech needs to change to ensure that only ethical developments are made, and only its employees can do that. Because the leaders only see dollar signs, they do not have humanity's best interests at heart. And I ask every tech worker to stand up for humanity and commit to refusing to provide your skills for apartheid and genocide. People have the power together, and we can change the future of the world by standing up now and saying no tech for apartheid and no tech for genocide. Thank you.
Thank you so much, John, and looking forward to find out a little bit more about your experience in Cork and about the actions that you have been doing with your campaign there. But before, I will give the floor to Vlad Mureșan from Palestine Solidarity Cluj-Napoca in presenting the newest campaign, which this event actually is the occasion for its launch.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Bella. Thank you, Joanne, for joining us tonight. I think it's really important we managed to construct this kind of international networks because, after all, this is an international problem. You know, we are dealing with multinational corporations that no longer have just one residence in one country. And in the following, I would like to make an argument why this kind of campaign is important, not just in the general context, but also here in Cluj-Napoca. And sorry. Yeah, before that, I would like to go a bit back to what Bella and also Joanne mentioned about the deep involvement of the tech sector in Israel and its importance for the Israeli economy. But I think it's even more than that. It's not just that the tech sector it provides like 20% of the GDP of the country. I think when you look at Israel, which is one of the most militarized society in the modern world, I think we can see that it's very hard to actually draw a distinct line between what the Israeli state means, what its military and its occupation forces means, and the university sector and the tech sector. You know, these are all entities that are so embedded within the occupation that when you feed knowledge into the university, you're also doing it into the tech sector and into the military. I mean, I think it's no news for everyone that most of the Israeli leaders have been part of the IDF, that the universities provide specific programs for the IDF, and also the tech sector is a big collaborator with the occupation forces. And all of this, of course, happens through Western support, be it through Western capital that goes into the tech sector, through Western public funding that goes into the Israeli university sector, and of course through Western political support, who is constantly helping Israel to escape every kind of condemnation and international legal condemnation for their crimes. So in this respect, I think Cluj plays a very interesting role. We have also been called the Silicon Valley, not of the Middle East, but of Eastern Europe. And I think for everybody who is living here, they know that the tech sector has played a very important role in the city in the last decade. But at the same time, the whole tech sector has developed this kind of untouchable status. You know, it's very taboo to discuss about the fact that, okay, the foreign companies that came to Cluj, they're providing jobs, but why did they came here in the first place? I mean, they came here because we have a very good public university system, because we have good public infrastructure, and of course, because they have a lot of tax deductions which were guaranteed by the state. So we believe in this respect that it's about time, you know, to actually hold the sector accountable about where its work is going. You know, it's not just about okay, they have an influence on the city, but we need to know how the work that's done in Cluj it ends up actually being used against people in Gaza, in the West Bank, and then sometimes also comes back and it's used against people who are trying, for example, to cross the Mediterranean Sea into Europe, or it's used to police migrant population and the poor within Europe itself. So the idea of this campaign was, in a way, to mimic the BDS approach. We have done quite a lot of research and see which were the companies from Cluj that have the strongest connection with the Israeli regime, not just in Gaza, but also in the West Bank, but also in terms of how it helps the Israeli regime in knowledge production and in technology development. Because I think one of the arguments that also the BDS and the No Tech for Apartheid campaign made really well is that you cannot make a distinction between technology that is for civilian use and technology that is for military use. I think this kind of dual use framework has become quite redundant in recent times. So we can safely say that any company that is producing research and knowledge in Israel is, in a bigger or smaller way, part of the occupation. So based on our research, we managed to identify 4 big companies that are quite visible here, but are also quite an important partner to the Israeli regime. I mean, of course, I think everybody knows that Romania has a lot of ties with the Israeli state. We have a very big Romanian diaspora in Israel, so there are a lot of connections between the two countries and also the companies that operate in the countries. But yeah, we decided to focus on these four companies, the first of which is Siemens. For those who don't know, Siemens has quite a big lab here in Cluj. They have partnership with the local technical university, and they've also been a target of the BDS campaign for quite some years now. They have been active in Israel for over 20 years now. They have been involved in building Israeli infrastructure, especially in transportation and traffic management, but they have also been involved in population control, as they have been providing the private security system for the Gilboa prison, which is one of the prisons who, among others, is hosting Palestinian political prisoners. But also, in recent years, I think the biggest project that is associated with Siemens, I think also as Joanne mentioned before, is the Eurasia Interconnector. This is an underwater electricity cable that has capacity of 2,000 megawatts. The project is supposed to run from Israel to Cyprus to Greece, and the goal is to connect the Israeli electric infrastructure to the European infrastructure. And why is this an issue? I mean, of course, this raises a lot of questions, not just because Israel will feed into Europe electricity produced there, which from an environmental perspective, I know many people know, but I think almost 80% of the electricity in Israel is produced through fossil fuel. But it also raises a lot of questions regarding the way that this infrastructure is used to enforce the occupation and the control of the Palestinians. As probably most people know, the Palestinian territories are dependent on all energy sources from Israel. And this doesn't happen because, say, Israel is such a benevolent occupier and gives electricity to the occupied population, but because the Israeli occupation forces does not allow the Palestinian to actually build and develop their own infrastructure. It's the same is true in Gaza, which before they left Gaza in 2006, they destroyed the power plants that were active there, and then, since then they denied access to new materials. But it's also the same in the West Bank. West Bank, which is an area that has a lot of potential, especially for renewables, but because of the fragmented land and the fact that Israel controls a big portion of the territories that could house this kind of green energy, it's impossible for them to develop. Another issue which was quite present and is developing in recent years, it's also that new renewable projects are starting to pop up in the occupied settlements. In the last few years, Israel has approved 23 new renewable projects within the occupied West Bank. And these are all in illegal occupied territories, in illegal settlements. This is also recognized by the EU. Yet somehow the European Union thinks it's good business to connect to this infrastructure, which is used actually as an occupation tool. The next company we identified, and this is probably not a very big company at an international level, definitely not as big as Google or as Amazon, but it's a very visible company here in Cluj. It's Entity Data. They're a company from Japan, mostly focused on cybersecurity. And they have a lab in Tel Aviv, and they boast that one of their main clients is the IDF. We have done a bit of research, but unfortunately, quite little information is available about the actual projects that this lab is involved in. to have an idea, the entity has an R&D portal where all the labs are present and where you can access all the projects, but the lab in Tel Aviv is missing from this list. So we can only speculate why. But they are very active in developing AI-powered solutions for different technologies. They have partnered with local Israeli tech startups to develop automotive security systems, and they are quite present, especially in the last few years, in the Israeli tech scene, and they're looking to invest into new tech startups. Another company, which is, again, probably not very visible in everyday life, is Alstom. Alstom is a French company which is specialized in rail transport. They have been quite active in recent years in Romania. They have supplied quite a lot of electric trains for also in Cluj, but also in other parts of this country. One of the most interesting things about them that this is actually a company that is included on the United Nations blacklist of companies that are operating in illegal settlements, which are constructed, of course, on Palestinian land. They have been part of the development of the Jerusalem light rail. This is also quite an interesting story because they were one of the targets of an extensive BDS campaign, which was successful for a time. They dropped the project, but they actually came back in the project after this in another form, in another consortium, with a smaller role, but still they're there. And why the Jerusalem light rail is controversial? Because as you can see on the map, the line is connecting the old city of Jerusalem to the Pisgat Zaev settlement in occupied West Bank. In recent years, they've also been part of the development of the Green Line. The Green Line it's also part of the Jerusalem light rail, which is a planned project that it hasn't the construction hasn't started yet, but the project looks to connect the old city in Jerusalem to Tel Aviv, so passing from multiple spots in occupied Palestinian territory. And the last company we identified, again, a company that's quite present in Cluj, and this is Bosch. Bosch also has a lab in Tel Aviv. They mostly focus on technologies like artificial intelligence, cybersecurities, and internet. They're also a major supplier of automotive components and technologies. As most people know, they don't just have like offices and a development lab in Cluj, they also have a factory outside of the city. And one of the reasons why we decided to look into Bosch is because some of their components, there are reasons to believe that they are utilized in army vehicles that are used in Gaza, but also, for example, in Caterpillar equipment that is used for demolition, both in Gaza and also in the West Bank. So what do we ask from these companies? I mean, basically, one of our main argument is, as I mentioned before, that it's impossible to draw a line between civilian technology and military technology. So in this respect, we have seen that all regulation that is supposed to guard civilians against this kind of technology has failed. I mean, we have a dual-use political legislative framework at the EU level, but it has completely failed. I mean, it has failed in many cases, not just in the case of Gaza and the West Bank. So we believe that the only moral thing to do for this company is just one, to stop all trade with the Israeli state until it ends its genocidal campaign in Gaza and puts an end to the apartheid regime, to stop all research collaboration with the Israeli institution until the conditions prior are met. Because as I mentioned before, the Israeli university sector is part of this occupation ecology and cannot be taken out of it. Third, I think we encourage them to stop all trade with third parties involved with the Israeli state. Four, we encourage them to divest from companies collaborating with the Israeli regime. And third, since these kind of companies, they love, their CSR and the human rights policies. I mean, we encourage them to actually direct these kinds of schemes to the victims of genocide and apartheid and not to the IOF forces that some of them have done until now. Okay, so that was on my part, and I think now we can open the Q&A section. Thank you.
Thank you, Vlad. Indeed, if someone has a question to address, can do it either by chat or can open his or her own mic. There is also, I guess, if I see well, there is a possibility to raise the hand in case you want. So in the meantime, until the public thinks about it, I will address a question to Bella because I mean we have seen that the boycott, divestment, and sanctions actions have been working in the apartheid regime in South Africa. So in these 20 years since the BDS movement exists, are there already some successful examples of people pushing companies and maybe also, I don't know, tech companies to divest from certain projects?
Thank you. Yes, most definitely. I think that I always like to anchor my expectations for social justice movement work in what we've seen as possible in South Africa. Because apartheid in South Africa lasted a long time, and it took continued efforts, multiple tactics, one of them being BDS tactics, to be able to gain independence and end apartheid of South African people. And so you look at that, and it did take time. And the work that we're doing, no matter if you're doing it at an international level or a localized level in your hometown, this takes time and it takes persistent effort. And so, as we saw with South Africa, it took time, took effort, but it is possible to end apartheid. It's possible to end genocidal regimes. And for example, with tech, the biggest win recently was with Intel canceling its $25 billion contract or factory plant that it was planning on, that it had contracted out. And so that was a major win. And I think that really shows the BDS movement's power, because even just the threat of launching a BDS campaign against Intel caused shareholders to really fear the power that the people have, the economic power we have, the political power we have, and also the power to put these companies on display in the media and expose what they're doing. And we've also seen that with other companies, like for example, a couple years back, the BNC did a more informal pressure campaign on social media with Bill Gates, and it worked really well. Basically, it was two pictures next to each other, and it was, Bill Gates says he cares about all human rights except for Palestinian rights, and then showed what his company is doing in Israel and Palestine. And, honestly, it seems like he was ashamed of that type of public exposure. And so then his company didn't divest, but he personally divested millions of his personal funds, excuse me, from apartheid-ridden companies. And so we can see that the BDS movement is extremely powerful. And I think that it's so important to see also how it works on several levels. You have it reaching the International Criminal Court, the International Court of Justice, the UN, and these are BDS platforms in which BDS movement can gain momentum and gain support. And then we also see the BDS movement taking hold in grassroots areas as well. We're talking about smaller universities. For example, I went to a very small 1,000 person university, but I was very proud of my school that it was the first school to cut ties with Israeli universities and it voted to institute an academic boycott. And so we see these small wins are really big wins, no matter where you are, no matter how small it seems, because they're setting a precedent. And so I think that especially in the last year since the genocide in Gaza began, I think that more and more people have been energized and have been waking up to the reality of what colonialism and military occupation looks like, and that there's no other way out of it, and that we have to resist. We have to resist no matter where we are, no matter what positionality we have to resist. Excuse me. And so I'm really excited to see the momentum the BDS movement's gaining, and also the successes that um, we're able to energize each other as well for those successes. So
I mean, we have seen, yeah, that it's important for the public image to be shaken a little bit, because especially nowadays, the image counts a lot also for companies and public figures and so on. I mean, we have seen also in, I guess it was 2020 when Microsoft pulled off from an AI company that was active in Israel. So what do you think it's different now, for example? So I think it gets a little bit more difficult. Why do you think it is so? I have seen there are many thousands of tech workers in US. Do you have any grasp of the no tech campaigns in US in regards to this?
for sure, I think that while we are seeing momentum, and I think that more and more people are speaking out and joining the BDS movement and Palestine Solidarity movement, you're right that it is getting harder in a lot of ways. And I think that really shows that when people in power are threatened, they do everything they can to hold on to whatever they have left. And so I think that the forms of repression that we're seeing from within companies of silencing workers who are speaking out, you know, trying to go against people who are writing shareholder resolutions, trying to not only ignore student divestment campaigns, but also working with universities to put more regulations on students, more limits of freedom of speech. We're also, like Joanne was showing, how on social media that there's so much censorship around Palestine liberation work. It's because when we're getting to a turning point, I do believe that. And as we're getting to that, those in power in the Israeli government, in big corporations, including tech corporations that are profiting off of genocide, that are profiting off of military occupation, they're doing everything they can to hold on. But I think that this again presents an opportunity where we can't be deterred by these types of repression that we're facing. And the biggest thing we can do is to come together to build power collectively, as we're doing right here on this call today, because that's the only way that we're going to be able to stand up to these honestly pretty scary, humongous organizations, whether they're governments, whether our own governments. I speak personally as a US citizen, and also to these corporations that have such a grip and such a hold on our economic and lives. So I think that in the US, I think that we had that wave of tech workers being fired in the spring after speaking out and doing some in-person demonstrations. And it's really unfortunate those people lost their livelihoods, but to be coming out and being very visible made this whole movement even more, it gave it so much more momentum, the No Tech for Apartheid movement. And so I think now there's been a lot of tech workers in the US who are taking a step back and thinking, how can we organize within our companies? How can we work with outside groups for pressure campaigns? How can we be the most strategic we can to be able to put the maximum pressure on our own companies? And so that has been really exciting too, because these workers, more than anybody, they know what these companies are doing. They know because they find themselves complicit in that work. And I have the utmost respect and gratitude for people who are taking those risks and organizing, because that's the only thing we can do right now is to continue organizing and build power.
Thank you. It is as it is, Joanne. Actually, she unfortunately had to leave because of work call. But what I know about her is that she was the first employee from Oracle to join the already 1,000 tech workers from Cisco who initiated the No Tech campaign for apartheid in Ireland. So I guess this is very brave to start all alone and then strive to get your workers all together and either anonymous or public. But she has been very active and as she says, at least. Unfortunately, for the moment, that her views are not the same one as Oracle's. Coming back to Vlad and putting this in the bigger picture, because yes, solidarity among the campaigns is very important because these companies have offices around the world. About the campaign in Cluj, if there are interested tech workers here and around Cluj that are not from the companies that you mentioned, do they have a role in the future No Tech campaign?
Yeah, I mean, of course. I think in general, so we see the tech sector is quite well interconnected within itself as well. So obviously, when we are talking about the workers in the sector, yes, let's say like, the first tier would be like the people who are actually involved directly within these companies. But I think another goal would be to try to create this kind of environment where people start asking questions. Okay, where is my work going? What is the company that I work in? Who are they collaborating with? Because these are the companies that we have found out about, but there are a lot more companies. There are a lot more companies in other cities. Cluj, it's the self-styled Silicon Valley, but Bucharest, for example, has a lot more companies. They have Google, they have Microsoft, they have Intel, so it goes way beyond these companies that we highlighted. And also, I think from the perspective of the tech workers, I think it's important to raise this question, why this sector is not organized in any way, because, okay, they occupy a privileged position in Romania, but they're also in another way very very vulnerable because there are no unions, there are no organizations, so when you have a question about your work, you have no one to talk to. You talk as one person against a multi-million billion-dollar corporation. I think one of the goals is also to try to push people in this direction, to try to organize as workers.
I can say something about that as I work in the tech sector in Cluj, or Bosch actually, and just specifically unionizing and general worker organization, I would say that there's a real lack of interest from the point of view, exactly as you say, we occupy privileged positions, we have good salaries, etc. I don't think people recognize the precarity of the position in the sense of if you don't have any bargaining power, tomorrow Bosch could decide that they want to increase their footprint in India and decrease it in Romania, for example. Actually, in Germany right now, they're sort of starting some working organizations because they're decreasing their hours and so on there just because their salaries take up more. And just a quick question though, for Joanne, could we get her contact somehow? Because I would like to ask her just some questions about, I don't know, just strategies and so on that they've used.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, okay.
Yes, the No Tech campaign also has like their Instagram account.
Okay.
They are connected also with all the other No Tech campaigns in UK and US because these campaigns are tackling Google and Amazon. So this is like the main thing. And so yes, we can share with you also their contact. And anyhow, she was willing, and as part actually of the campaign that we are envisioning for Cluj is not only to address the companies through different actions, but also, if needed, to be able to support and empower more tech workers about how to be better able to hold accountable these companies. So in this sense, Joanne, and not only her, was open to share more about how they did it in Ireland, and also what are their challenges there. And she shared also that there are possibilities for tech workers to be active, also anonymous, but also public, because many roles can fit in, from spreading information to going in front of the buildings. So there are many things to cover somehow. So yes.
Yeah, just to add, like one of the goals is to help to connect people who work here with also people who work in other countries. This was also one of the ideas when we reached out to Joanne and also when we reached out to Bella, because we realized this is an international issue, not just here in Cluj.
We have also some other questions in the chat. The first one is addressing Bella. What can we do to help the BDS movement? And if you think there is another way to help the end of the apartheid besides boycotting. Tatiana finds it difficult to raise awareness when the social media platforms are constantly silencing those who speak up. So I guess the second question can also address you, Vlad. So if you are okay with it, Bella, to...
Thank you. Can you repeat the first half of the question for me?
Sure. What can we do to help the BDS movement?
Sure. Thank you. I think so for the BDS movement, one of the reasons why the BDS movement is what Palestinians are asking of us is because there are many tactics to seek liberation, and BDS is the best and most effective way for people who are not in Palestine. So people like myself, people like many of us who are not Palestinian or on the occupied territory, to be able to help is through trying to target Israel's economic standing, because we see this with South Africa as well, that to weaken the South African government so that the liberation movement could be effective, first, people needed to call on the international community for help. And the most strategic way to weaken the apartheid regime economically is through things that we can do in our everyday actions, including boycotting, organizing for divestment, and calling on our governments for sanctions. And so I think that with these three parts of BDS, boycotting, you can look at the BDS website and look at our boycott targets and try to make informed decisions as a consumer. But at the same time, we can't boycott everything. And so it makes it challenging to figure out what's the next step. How can I take it to the next step? Because that's what you can do as an individual. But the next two steps are things that we need to come together collectively. So making connections with the groups supporting BDS, such as this local group here in Romania, or local groups wherever you are. You can just look up like Palestine Solidarity groups and find ones in your community that look good to you. There's also international ones that you can join through online forums. And with that, you can help trying to build collective power and trying to support divestment campaigns. And I think even on this call, we've gotten to hear from multiple people who are in the tech world who, part of the work that we're doing, we have to have inside work and outside work. So we need people inside of institutions working to change it. And we also need people protesting on the streets, not buying certain products. We need those groups to support each other. And so I think the best thing you can do is try to get connected with local groups that maybe they're not just a Palestine Solidarity group, but a group that is working for something in your local community and also is supporting BDS. I know that the government processes work very differently across the world, but for example, here in the US, one of the most inspiring forms of divestment campaigning that I've seen is called the divest invest model. So here in the US, there have been people calling on, let's divest from policing and let's divest from military occupation and companies that are supporting genocide in Israel, and instead use that money to invest in healthcare for people, to invest in more affordable housing for people. And so this sort of divest, invest model, I think is so exciting because it takes local issues that are important to you and to your community and to organizations there, and is aligning those with the interest for collective liberation globally. And so I think that there's so many different ways to get involved, and visiting the BDS website. And even though on social media, there is a great deal of censorship, it's also such an important place it's an important forum for organizing even still. And so using social media to follow Jewish Voice for Peace and see what they're doing, how you can support that, local groups in your area, following the BNC. These are still really important channels of resistance that we can use. And just because they're being taken from us and censored and things, they're still very important. So joining local groups, keeping communication open, doing what you can as an individual consumer, but then taking the next step and trying to get in touch with people who are trying to do the same work as you.
Thanks. And maybe Vlad, if you like to address like the second question, what are also other ways besides boycotting?
Yeah, I think so. In a way, what we're talking about is not really boycotting, and it's kind of more in the divestment logic. And basically, the idea here is to try to think of campaigns, of actions that have not just the reputational risks for Israel, because I mean, here in Romania, I think everybody has seen that despite the protests, I mean, the overall climate remains very friendly towards the occupation. The political system is, again, very friendly to the Israeli regime. So one of the avenues that we have left for action is to actually try to create this kind of economic pressure and reputational pressure for companies that are involved in the occupations ecosystem, you know. And of course, we also need to be realistic that Romania is not the biggest power in Europe. You know, we're not a very economic, they're not a great economic power, also not a political power, but that we are also part of this global movement, and that we need to create this kind of international networks of solidarity, because as I mentioned before, you know, we are dealing with multinational companies, you know, that they operate everywhere. So we need to think about how we can put a spotlight on them and at least make them think twice before they accept another contract in Israel. And also, I think on a more practical level here, one of the major things that have actually stood out in the last year is that we need to build some kind of like organizational capacity within Romania, because I think one of the striking things that's very different here in comparison to other countries, where you see, for example, in England or in Italy, you know, when people march for the liberation of Palestine, you see together, you see, okay, we see the pro-Palestinian campaigns, you see the BDS campaign, but you also see the unions, you see the teacher unions, so you see this like very diverse ecology, where here it's almost completely absent. So I think part of this work, of our work, is actually to try to reach, you know, the people who could be allies in this fight, you know, who maybe don't hold the exact same position as us, but that can be allies.
If I can add on to that, I totally agree. I think that you need to build capacity with different groups of people to be able to do this work successfully. And I think that's a little bit of what I was talking about with the divest invest campaign strategy, that you really need to make these connections with people who are interested in very local issues, whether that is like you're talking about unions, whether it's teachers, whether it's healthcare workers, and try to find ways of connecting with people about things that they care about. For example, if you're trying to get a nurses union or healthcare workers involved, make this about healthcare. Gaza is about healthcare. Palestine is about the right for healthcare, and talk about how what doctors have seen in Gaza. Talk with them about things that they'll be able to connect with. If you're talking with people, workers' unions and things like that, labor unions, talk about how really BDS is an international picket line. What BDS is saying, please don't purchase these products the same way that we would say, don't cross that picket line, because we're supporting the workers internationally. And I think it can be hard to just start with kind of the lefty activist language of collective liberation, because I think that it takes a while to realize. It took a while for me to realize even what that truly means, what really is collective liberation. And I think the idea of it being an ecosystem, that we're all in this ecosystem, and that each of the things that we're interested in, we have to support each other with. Because like you were saying, Vlad, at the end of the day, it's us against these multinational corporations, where it's us against these governments that are basically puppets for international corporations and other governments that are controlling them. And so I think trying to make connections with people locally and showing that this is an issue that you also care about really makes what is international or far away very localized and very personal from people. So I really appreciate that part of what you were saying.
I liked also what Joanne said about in terms of how can we find also our place within the movement or the solidarity movement. Is regardless if you are a tech worker, you can be also with another role, as she was giving this example of the local council not buying any more HP products, for example. So all these companies can be attacked from several ways, as you said, from the inside, inside as a tech worker, but also from the outside, starting from my individual choice of not buying a certain product, maybe HP, IBM, or I don't know, other cosmetic products and so on. And BDS has already since years several lists where you can inform yourself. From going to our other workplace that might not be a tech workplace or our local council, because nowadays technology is all around us. So we might find these examples wherever we take a look. So probably if we are paying more attention around us, we will see that actually these companies are providers of tools, services, products to many around us, institutions, other entities, and so on. There is also another question here. How can I find reliable information about different brands and products? I guess you already mentioned this, Bella, that on the BDS movement, no, there is this list.
Exactly. So I think this is a good question. I actually need to come up with a more specific answer for it because it's hard because so many companies are complicit that it's hard. You're gonna show up to the grocery store and you're gonna look at the aisle and have like just a very few options. But I think going back to the BDS movement's theory of targeted boycotting, we're not asking you to boycott everything. Instead, what we want to do is put maximum pressure on a couple groups at a time. And those groups are going to be groups that are on the BDS website, and you'll be able to see those. There are also other, there are definitely other companies and brands that are complicit. And I think there's a thing called Boy Cat that you can go on and you can put like a QR code, and then it'll tell you if the company is involved in this servicing settlements or you know, other ways of complicity. And so feel free to boycott as many things as you want to. Feel free to boycott everything if you can. But at the very least, look at what the BDS website has for boycott targets. For example, we had Puma, the shoe and, you know, athletic wear brand, up as a boycott target. And then it worked, and Puma pulled out of contracts with the Israeli government supporting their sports teams and things like that. And so now, you know what, you can buy Puma shoes again. And so Puma now is not a BDS target anymore because they've successfully ended their complicity. And that was because instead of saying, you know what, we're going to boycott 10 different shoe brands, we said we are boycotting this one right now. And that maximum pressure was applied. And so it's a hard question, really. And I see what you're saying with worrying about boycotting more items with lower impact. So do what you can, but choose the ones that have that are on the BDS website first. Prioritize those targets. But of course, boycott anything that you know is complicit if you are able to.
Thank you. And someone was mentioning the Thanks app, but yes, some less known brands return no result on scanning, because also it's very difficult at one point to find out all these links, and also in regards to the tech companies is the same sometimes, because they are not perceived and not known actually all the funds that go behind and like an octopus, and it's difficult to find all this information. So if we also need to do a little bit of individual research. We are coming a little bit to an end of the webinar, and I would like to ask Vlad, what can we expect next from the No Tech campaign for Apartheid and Genocide here in Cluj?
As I mentioned before, one of our goals is to actually engage tech workers. And we are in the constant process of doing this. So please, if you work in the industry or know people that work in the industry and would want to get involved, please contact us. I mean, I know some people have more precarious situations than others, but you can be involved without actually putting yourself as an employer or employee at the risk. No. And I think for the next steps, I mean, the first step was this. We try to make public this kind of information, which is not available, in the local or mainstream media. And we will try to engage these companies. We decided that the first step, we will try to engage them on their formal channels. I think there are a lot of gaps in knowledge and information, so we will try to engage them, at least have a bit of clarity of what exactly some of them are doing in Israel, and see if they have the decency to respond or not. And then, yes, basically this, we will continue to try to organize with workers in the sector and engage these companies in different ways. One of the reasons why we chose companies that are quite visible here is because they're also working a lot with the city. They are sponsoring a lot of events. So again, we want to bring some scrutiny to that, to put a spotlight on which are the companies that are actually sponsoring events, public events. So yeah, we will continue. This is just the beginning. So we'll see where it takes us. I see there are more questions, so I'm just gonna end here.
Okay, maybe we address the last one, because I guess, especially considering Romania, where maybe there is, I mean, from the institution's point of view, for sure, we know that there is the support to the Israeli regime, but we also know that we are a religious country, so Bethlehem is in the saint city and so on. So how can we make ourselves taken more seriously, both by our peers who might ridicule us or belittle us, and on the other side, the authorities? How can we do this
I just say something on that point. I think one of the main reserves people have regarding this issue is that they always say, "Oh, but this doesn't concern us. It doesn't happen in Romania. We are very far away for what's going on." Also, then you add the layer of the racism that exists in Romania, and I think this is, I mean, the post 9/11 Islamophobic discourse is still very strong and had quite a big impact on Romania. So in general, what we try to, when we talk to people, we talk with them from our position as Romanian citizens. We try to highlight what our state is doing, how our tax money is involved in the genocide and the occupation, how the companies who are benefiting from all kinds of public funds and public infrastructure here, they're also complicit in the genocide and the occupation. And yeah, I think also one of the main goals is to make people take us seriously by showing that, yes, we can organize and that we can have, an impact. Because when you're just, I mean, in a way, it's hard for someone who's alone to be taken serious, as you say. But yeah.
And what I
Definitely.
add is that also what we have been doing as Palestine Solidarity Cluj-Napoca, as a collective and also as individuals, I guess it's important also to highlight and the advances that have been done also at the international institutions level. We have already decisions of the International Court of Justice. We have warrant arrests emitted by the International Criminal Justice. So all these decisions make it more official what we already know. The ICC says that there is a plausible genocide and is opening up an investigation into it. So this gives us maybe a little bit more leverage in front of our peers, and also when we are calling out institutions, when we are pressuring them, we have also to remind them that anyone, not only governments, but also our universities who are collaborating with other Israeli universities and companies and so on, they are also accountable under this decision of the ICC and under of the international documents that have been signed by Romania. So some of this information can also be found on our link tree, and we have already sent several letters. So maybe this is helpful also when talking to your peers. And hopefully you will also join us in the future actions and find also new possibilities to come all together in a bigger number and not necessarily feeling all alone in front of people we are facing. So I guess we will end the webinar. Many things can be said. And hopefully we will have also some other occasions. I would like to thank you very much, our interpreter tonight. She has been doing all alone the interpretation into Romanian, and this is very challenging. Thank you so much, Laura, for it. And once again, thanks so much to Bella and Joanne, who is not anymore with us here, to their contribution today. And let's keep in touch. And for all of you who have joined us today, you can follow our Instagram page, the Facebook page, and you can also subscribe to our Telegram channel if you want to find more updates. And join us and either do together all the future actions or join us when they are happening. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you.
Have a good evening and see you all in solidarity in the street for Palestine.
Goodbye.